So we are now in the exhibition of one of the two exhibitions that are part of our festival, The Curse of Smooth Operations. And this whole festival revolves around the idea of one particular sentence. The most dissatisfying technology is the one that works. This sentence sort of stands at the center of the whole festival. And normally we think that technology is dissatisfying, of course, when it doesn't work, when it underperforms, when it causes unforeseen side effects, or when it breaks down. We want to turn things around and look at it from the opposite perspective. So what if the most dissatisfying technology is the technology that works well, or even exceeds expectations? And this is, of course, something very contradictory. I mean, all technology is there to achieve some kind of task, to satisfy some kind of desire, and once this desire is satisfied, how can this be dissatisfying? How can satisfaction itself be dissatisfying? Yeah, and in this particular exhibition we are focusing on systems, and particularly the blind spots within systems, because what we want to suggest is that every system, like be it a system of language, or be it a system of capitalism, or the meter system, all such systems have some kind of blind spot that the system cannot integrate. The system cannot really systematize. Each work here then deals with that blind spot in a different way.
So for instance, where we are now here is that part of the exhibition at the IMPAKT Center. That is a new work by Amsterdam-based artist Zachary Formwald. So we invited him to produce a new piece. So it's commissioned by IMPAKT, and it's entitled An Industry and Its Irreplaceable Medium. And the blind spot here actually is to be found in the medium itself, and which is the gelatine layer in the photosensitive material you have on the film strip, and you have also on the photographic paper. So the very basic technology of photography and film relates on that photosensitive layer. And this is actually, gelatine is actually made from rendered animal remains. And that's something you easily forget and you don't see in the transparent film strip, for instance, of analog film. And that's what Zachary is looking at, and he relates that to the mass production in capitalism, and to how far the meatpacking industry, so the disassembling of animals, became a great innovator and model for capitalist production, and more literally for the assembly line. And the special thing here is that he makes us understand that in the meat industry, every part, every little substance of the animal is made into a commodity. Here we have bubbly Greek on the 16mm projection, which were for 100 years ago animal remains were still only dumped into the water, and it still releases methane. So in tiny bubbles, you can see it in that image that's recently shot. On the back side of that screen, we have a video essay by Zachary telling the story and these connections I just sketched out between the animal, the medium, the artistic medium, and flow of capital or generation of capital. So here we have a very tangible blind spot in terms of the dissolved body of the animal that generates commodification, and at the same time the film medium.
Yeah, if we then continue, we walk over here. If we enter this room, we will enter a video installation by Danica Dacic called Emily. And what this video installation shows is a little girl who has hearing disabilities and is learning how to use sign language. And what is specific about the situation is, of course, if you compare it to a normal situation with when you teach a child how to speak, this happens over a very long time. But in this, since this child's parents are most likely not speaking sign language, she is instructed by a teacher, so you can really observe the situation where the child learns to use language. And you can really see how the body of the child is sort of molded by language. When we think about here, the blind spot then would be that, you know, when we assume that when we teach a child to speak, we teach them to express themselves. But are they really expressing themselves? Because this system of language, it's a system, right? And it comes from the outside. It's always taught to us. And that's very kind of visible in Daniket's film because the voice is always out. You don't see the person speaking to the child. You only, like, that's always a voiceover. So it's almost like the voice comes from somewhere else, comes from society, and then forms the body of the child. And this is something we are not normally alert to when we are speaking. We assume that we are expressing ourselves, but what are we really doing that, or are we rather sort of expressing something that has been taught to us, a system? Because language is not just a way to communicate, it also influences the very way we think. We think through language.
What we see here is a dog that doesn't have any skin. So it's only the digital elements in video animation that define the movement of the animal. That's an installation by Benedikt Terwil from Germany. And so you see in the face you have lots of these elements because you need a more refined movement, and the rest of the body there's only a few bigger ones. And Benedikt takes that, let's say, digital instrument and rematerializes it into ceramics and presents it like an archaeological archaeopteryx on the floor. And here we have a couple of references to other works in the show and also to our theme in general. So here too, in this, let's say, digital animated dog body, it's not an internal movement that runs it, but it's an external force that applies the movement to it in this, let's say, bigger endeavor to create ever truer representations of the world and simulate it to an extent that you cannot distinguish anymore the simulation from reality. So in a way, it's a postulation or commemorates in a way that state of an fleshless, bodiless dog and kind of transfigures it into an archaeological fossil that is to be found or excavated here in the exhibition space.
And then lastly, we move over here. In this box, we have a work by Sasha Litvinseva and Benny Wagner. And this work is called Constant, and it deals with a meter system. And in a certain sense, this work is really paradigmatic for the whole festival, I think, because it describes very well how the most dissatisfying technology can be the one that works. The meter system was invented in the aftermath of the French Revolution, and it was supposed to be a egalitarian project. Like, you would be able to use, the idea was that you'd be able to use the same way to measure, for everyone would use the same system to measure, so that you couldn't be fooled anymore. Like, because before, up until that moment, there had been many ways to measure land. But with the meter system then was the idea that you would be able to, that you would have the same standard for everyone. But then this system then became also later on a tool for powers, like state powers and corporations to mete out the earth and actually rob the earth take it from the few and give it take it from the many and give it into the hands of the few. So it sort of, in that sense, it reversed itself. Instead of becoming egalitarian, it became something really, how to say,
dissatisfying.
Dissatisfying for the many, at least.
All right, we are here at the second venue of the festival exhibitions of the Curse of Smooth Operations. Behind us is a wall drawing specifically produced for here the empty retail store at Steenweg 26. It's called Hypermnesia by Swiss artist Mark Bauer. And on the other side we have Vincent Graf's video animation, 22nd November 2018, which are drawings of images from a newspaper issue of that very day in November 2018, and these images are erased every time, and in the end the whole paper has dissolved. And these two artworks are sort of accompanying a project by Anita Di Bianco, who we invited to do the second commissioned artwork of this year's festival and produce a new newspaper issue of her corrections and clarifications.
2021 was actually the 20th anniversary of this project, which I started in Amsterdam at the Rijksacademie in 2001, just after September 11th, 2001, as a kind of response to the overwhelming amount of media that I felt that I was consuming. And at the time, since news was read on paper rather than digitally, the project has maintained that form of paper, even though reading habits have changed and become obviously more digital, and newspapers have a more digital presence now, and even correct themselves online. So from the beginning it was always a reverse chronological publication that started as close to the printing date as possible and stretched backwards of the items that newspapers themselves would correct. So these, several sentences that refer to a story but don't tell the story itself. And what's visible in these items are the brevity of the news cycle, the salient stories at any given time, and in the date range of each edition, one can see sort of the stories that were cycling through the news. So it was never meant actually as a cynical take on the fallibility of news media or of the errors that journalists make. And in fact, fact-checking has, like so many other things in media, become more freelance, as has journalism itself. So I didn't want to seem that I was picking on an already fragile ecosystem, actually, but I find the language very compelling, and I find it's a mirror of all of us, not just of the voice of the media, but actually those of us who read it, those of us who somehow take part in it it's a form of participation, obviously, reading the news. So this is year 21.
So the new edition is the first time English-Dutch you've produced. Here we have a couple of your, almost all of your back issues. And the fascinating about corrections and clarifications is it's a 2-decade project, normally 1 issue per year. And so it covers really 2 decades that I think have seen a huge change and transformation in the media landscape and the language of the media, and not only from the analog to the digital, but also this whole issue of fake news and right-wing attack on mainstream media and so forth, and all what happened in the news. How would you summarize that? And looking back now, this 20 years of corrections and clarification you have in there, what happened?
I guess the biggest thing is that when I started the project following the 90s, it was started in the context of criticism of mainstream media from the left, from a leftist perspective, which was a very fertile ground at that time. And since then, as Florian said, this kind of distrust of media has shifted much more to the right. So that's something that I've thought about a lot, is whether this project then participates in that hollowing out of trust in the media across the spectrum. And these are almost or most of the issues, and they've been in different formats, different languages, different cities. There was 2014 in Turkey, and earlier in Bosnia, so in Serbo-Croatian, Bosnian language, one in Slovenian, and then a number of the issues are in German and English, and then some are only English. But yeah, as you can see, they're all different qualities of paper, different formats, much like newspapers are something that is local and that is printed locally, and so that the project still has that analog resonance.
Yeah, for us for the festival this year, it's really important that we not only look at digital technologies, but also reflect on the analog here with the analog media or with the analog film in the other part of the exhibition, and bring that together. So really look at the history of technologies and not only talk about our digital devices, where it's very easy to ask that question, does the satisfaction related to it connect to the dissatisfaction? Very easy to understand, okay, when my mobile phone doesn't work, it dissatisfies me. But we want to rather look at the systematics, at the system of technology, and how that changes or has been influencing our life worlds radically. And here we see it in terms of the media landscapes, and many questions connected to that, also in terms of pure linguistics, and of course in recurring questions of racism or race, class and gender that reappear in these corrections in a very particular way. And here with the Mark Bauer's wall drawing, we also have that let's say connection or transformation from an analog narrative maybe to a digital one, referring here to Solaris by Tarkovsky in 1972, and rediscovering or discovering a house in Igor Shooter game from 2018, Battlefield number 5, and that resonating with Anita's projects here in the space. So we are very happy for this very specifically arranged wall drawing in the space.
So this is a work by a Swiss artist named Vincent Graf called 2211 2018, and it similarly, actually to my newspaper, it shows a version of the news cycle, in that he, with one large piece of drawing paper and Swiss newspapers from one day, from the 22nd of November in 2018, started to draw and erase the photographs and other images that he found in the paper. And slowly you see, as he draws and erases, that the paper itself disintegrates. So he kept up the drawing and the erasing and the making of the animation until the paper is no longer able to hold another pencil line. And yeah, so it is in a way just this fleeting, obviously, imagery from that particular moment in time of that day in the Swiss news.
yeah, these are the two, or have been the two exhibition venues of this year's IMPAKT Festival. The exhibitions run to the end of the year, but the festival that's now about to start today runs to Sunday. So it's a full program of talks, lectures, screenings at Head House in Utrecht, but at the same time online. So IMPAKT TV has a full program at the same time as the festival unfolds in the physical festival space, and there's also a platform, online platform to see the films. So it's a real full spectrum program of this year's festival, and we look forward to meet you at.